I stepped off the shuttle ramp onto the glinting crystalline platform of EOS Prime, the so-called neutral heart of the galaxy, and immediately felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes. The air shimmered with atmospheric converters humming beneath the glassy floor, a marvel of engineering to accommodate every breathing species. I adjusted the collar of my dress blues, straightened my back, and walked forward, alone. Every other delegation arrived in flocks, entourages of advisors, translators, and ceremonial guards. Not me. Earth sent one representative. No security detail. No political puppets. Just a marine. They thought it was a joke, some primitive display of bravado. Let them. That was the point. My boots echoed as I crossed the bridge to the summit dome, a silver structure like an inverted sunburst nestled between obsidian ridges. The guards at the entrance, four-limbed KYRR with obsidian armor, tensed as I passed. I didn't slow down. I didn't need to. My presence was sanctioned, my name already etched into the schedule: Gunnery Sergeant Callan Rourke, 5th Interstellar Infantry Division, Earth Federation. Inside, the reception was colder than the vacuum outside the dome. Delegates whispered in dialects my translator chip couldn't catch. Some turned away, offended by the sight of a human in military uniform. Others watched with expressions I couldn't read: amusement, curiosity, maybe even fear. I headed straight for the designated human seat, a solitary chair at the furthest edge of the great chamber, as if the architects wanted to keep me at arm's length. Fine by me. Let them try to box us in. We broke out of worse cages. I sat down, folded my hands, and waited. Let the galaxy take its best shot. Earth had already survived hell. I was just here to remind them. The summit chamber was a sensory overload, a dome of converging technologies and clashing aesthetics, each species staking its identity through architecture. The Bracca delegation had constructed a living moss throne. The Valari floated in grave-suspended orbs, their pheromones controlled by atmospheric regulators. My seat. A metal chair bolted to the floor. No frills, no defenses, just steel and resolve. I didn't need comfort. I needed presence. When the Valari matriarch spoke, her voice slithered through the translator, wrapped in layers of tone and ambiguity. Human. Why send a warrior to a table of peace? I could feel the temperature shift. Dozens of eyes, stalks, lenses, and antennae turned toward me. I rose slowly, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Because warriors understand peace better than politicians ever will, I said. We pay for it. The words weren't poetic, but they landed like ordnance. The Trinari scribe paused mid-scroll. The KYR general gave a grunt that might have been approval. The Valari didn't respond, but her orb dimmed slightly. They expected fear. They got facts. For the next hour, the delegates postured, weaving circles of language that meant nothing. Allegiances were implied, threats hidden in pleasantries. I said nothing. Just watched. Every species played a game. I played a different one. Then, without warning, the Krovax envoy dropped an accusation. Human colonies expand too quickly. Is it peace you want, or territory? I stood again. No MIC. No amplification. Just my voice. Earth didn't start the wars. We just finished them. The room shifted. Some sneered. Others sat straighter. I didn't flinch. Let them see it. I wasn't here to blend in. I was here to make them remember who we were. And why peace, with us, was the smart choice. My quarters were a small, windowless cell buried deep in the summit complex. No view of the stars. No comforts. Just a bunk, a sanitation unit, and a flickering interface that barely recognized Earth standard. The walls were lined with adaptive alloy, shifting color based on the mood of the occupant. Mine stayed steel gray. Unreadable. Just like me. I sat on the edge of the bunk, staring at a worn holophoto projected from a data tag around my neck. My old unit, Echo Squad. 12 of us, all grinning like fools after surviving the siege of Cradle's Edge. Now, 3 still breathing. The rest were names etched into polished memorials or coordinates logged in encrypted files. No parades. Just silence. They didn't send me here to talk. They sent me here to remind the galaxy what those sacrifices meant. What it cost us to be at this table. And why we weren't going to be pushed out of our seat. The next day, as the session resumed, I asked to speak. They hesitated. The moderator, a tentacled bureaucrat from the Keth Coalition, glanced at the other delegates, unsure. I stood anyway. I won't lecture you. "I'll just say this," I began. I tapped my data tag. The projection of Echo Squad lit the air above me. These people died for peace. Not for expansion. Not for conquest. For peace. No one interrupted. Not even the Velari. And I'm not here as a threat. I'm here as a reminder that humans fight hardest when they believe in something. I sat back down, heartbeat steady. For once, the room didn't erupt in politics. They just sat there, listening. Maybe for the first time since this summit began, they were actually hearing a human speak. Not with words, but with truth. The summit had stalled. Days of circular debates, procedural delays, and posturing had turned the air stale. No resolution, no movement, just accusations dressed as diplomacy. It was a standoff with too many players and too many grudges. And I'd had enough. I stood up in the middle of yet another endless discussion, cutting through the drone of translated voices. "We're wasting time," I said, loud enough to interrupt a Galan ambassador mid-sentence. All eyes turned. "If war's what you're really angling for, let's skip the formalities. Fight me." Silence. Not metaphorical. Actual silence. Not a whisper, not a rustle of limbs or flicker of biolight. I shrugged off my jacket and tossed it onto the table. One-on-one. You're strongest against me. If you win, maybe Earth walks away from the table. If I win, you listen. Really listen. Some laughed, harsh, clicking sounds and hisses from mouths not meant for mirth. Others looked scandalized, as if I'd insulted the very idea of peace. But one delegate didn't laugh. The Krovax warfather stood. 8 feet of armored muscle, tusks jutting from his lower jaw, ceremonial bone sabers strapped to his back. His kind considered hand-to-hand combat sacred. He stepped into the center of the chamber without a word. The floor transformed beneath us, adapting instantly into a dueling ring. Energy fields locked in around the edges. No weapons. No intervention. He grinned. I flexed my fingers. He charged first. I dodged low, letting his bulk carry him past, then struck hard to the back of his knee. He roared. We circled. Traded blows. My knuckles split. His arm cracked under an elbow. I drove into his guard. 15 minutes of pain, grit, blood. When it ended, he was on one knee. And I was still standing. The chamber erupted, not in protest. In awe. They carried the Krovax warfather off the dueling floor with his head held high, even in defeat. He nodded at me as they passed. No shame, no fury. Just respect. That nod echoed louder than any speech. It told the summit something words never could. Humanity had earned its place here, not by treaties, but by trial. After that, everything shifted. The whispers stopped. The glances changed. Where once they saw a brute, they now saw a warrior. Where they expected fear, they now found resolve. The Braca delegates, who hadn't spoken a word to me since I arrived, approached with a traditional offering, a small vial of their homeworld soil. It meant something. Everything meant something here. The Sevalian songweavers composed a short chant in my honor, their crystalline tones humming through the chamber's acoustics. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the message. They were acknowledging me the way they did their champions. That was new. Even the Trinari, who once dismissed us as barely post-tribal, now requested a private exchange of historical data. A symbolic gesture, but in politics, symbolism was currency. The Velari matriarch, as always, gave nothing away. But during the next session, she referred to me not as the human, but by my name. Just once. That was enough. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just listened. And they, for the first time, listened back. There was a shift in tone, a slow unraveling of centuries-old posturing. They began asking different questions, real ones. About Earth. About our diplomacy, our wars, our values. They were no longer trying to size us up. They were trying to understand us. I hadn't come here to be liked. I came here to be heard. And now, the galaxy was finally starting to listen. The explosion hit just after the third recess bell, during what should have been a harmless intermission. The blast tore through the eastern wing of the summit complex, sending a shockwave that rattled the chamber walls and shattered half the light panels above us. For a moment, the entire room froze. Then the screaming started. Smoke rolled in thick waves, and I moved before I could think, military training overriding protocol. I vaulted the railing, cutting through panicked diplomats and stunned security. A second blast followed, smaller but closer. It wasn't random. It was an attack. Someone wanted this summit to fall apart. I found the first wounded body slumped behind a fractured pillar, a Silek emissary with bioluminescent blood pooling under her. I dragged her out, shielding her from falling debris. 2 more diplomats, Surveillian twins, trapped under a collapsed beam. I got one free before my left leg caught a shard of metal. Pain bloomed, hot and sharp. I kept moving. The emergency lockdown delayed response teams, but I didn't wait. I pulled 3 more from the rubble before I found the bomber, one of the Athari aides, bleeding and clutching a detonator fragment. Fanatics. They'd rather destroy peace than share it. He raised a weapon. I didn't hesitate. 1 shot, clean through my thigh and into his chest. He dropped. I dropped. But I didn't black out. Couldn't. When the emergency crews finally arrived, they found me on the floor, soaked in blood, some mine, some not. Around me were 6 saved lives and 1 dead traitor. Word spread fast. Not just that a human fought again, but that a human had risked everything to save aliens, friends, enemies, strangers alike. In that chaos, with sirens blaring and walls burning, something stronger than fear took root. Trust. Earned in fire. The final session of the summit began under the weight of silence. Not the cold, suspicious kind from the first day, but something heavier, something reverent. The delegates filed into the chamber with slower steps and straighter backs. Scars still marked the walls where the explosions hit, patched hastily with tech and effort. But no one had left. No one had withdrawn. I entered last, limping slightly, stitches tight around my thigh. No uniform jacket this time, just the black underlayer, still torn at the shoulder. I didn't need decorations. They'd seen the proof. The moderator's voice trembled slightly as he called the summit to order. Then, something unexpected, he offered the floor to me. No procedural vote. No delay. Just a quiet nod. I walked to the center. The same place I'd stood to challenge the warfather. The same floor where I'd bled. I'm not a diplomat, I said, letting my voice carry. I'm a Marine. I've seen war. I've lost friends to it. And if I had to, I'd fight again. But I'd rather not. They listened. We're all tired. Of fighting, of mistrust, of pretending we don't share the same stars. Peace isn't a dream. It's a decision. One we make over and over, every day, every summit, every choice not to fire the first shot. I paused. You've seen what humanity can do when it's pushed. But I hope now you've also seen what we'll do to protect something greater than pride. I stepped back. Not a word more. Slowly, one by one, the delegates rose. First the Bracca. Then the Trinari. Even the Valari matriarch stood, her orb lifting high. They didn't cheer. They saluted. Not me. Humanity. One Marine had walked into the peace summit alone. And the galaxy stood with him,